Especially news just broke a little less than an hour ago, so we have a wide-ranging conversation in store. But before we get to that, I do want to talk about some legislation that you introduced earlier this month. It would prohibit businesses owned by certain foreign adversaries from operating on U.S. military bases. To start off the conversation, can you talk to us about the inspiration behind the legislation?
I think everybody knows broadly we've been trying very hard in Congress to find a way to prohibit our adversaries, including the Chinese Communist Party, from purchasing land around our military bases. What we have overlooked is where they are already operating on our military bases. And that's actually the point of the Military Installation Retail Security Act, which is taking any country or any company that is owned by a foreign adversarial nation, whether that's China, Russia, Iran, or North Korea, and making sure that they cannot operate from our military bases. It seems like common sense, but unfortunately, this is something that was overlooked in our government, and we are overlooking it no longer. We are going to take a company that we identified that's wholly owned by the Chinese Communist Party, that's GNC, the supplement company, and we are going to remove them from our military bases.
You're saying that this was overlooked. I mean, how did this come to your attention? Talk to us about that.
Well, someone came to our office and actually said that a good portion of the product that GNC sells is manufactured in China. And so we started to look into that. But through that investigation process and the due diligence, we actually discovered that GNC is owned by a company called Harrigan Pharmaceuticals, which is a company that's wholly owned by the Chinese Communist Party. How this actually happened and how it played out at 83 different retail locations on our military installations is actually just kind of an exploitation of a hole that was in our system. GNC got onto our military bases as a wholly owned U.S. company. Then in 2018, it sold 40% of its company, a minority stake, to Harrigan Pharmaceuticals. In 2020, GNC actually went bankrupt, and Harrigan bought the remaining 60% out of the bankruptcy process. There was no review or oversight with respect to a Chinese Communist Party owned company operating on our military bases, because when the initial sweep was done, it was an American-owned company. We're fixing that through the Military Installation Retail Security Act with respect to GNC, but we are also going to force base concessions and AFEs to do a review of all of the concession contractors that are underneath their purview to make sure that we don't have anyone else besides GNC that fits into this category.
So there are from what you're saying, over 80 different GNC locations on different military bases across the U.S. What concerns do you have specifically about GNC? Is there any indication that the CCP is infiltrating the military bases through the GNC locations, or is this more of a preemptive measure?
Is the bottom line. GNC says that information is not being transmitted back to China. But this is very similar to the argument that TikTok is making, effectively asking the folks in the United States to just trust them, that they have our best interests in mind. I think that's a bridge too far when we're talking about our military service members, particularly as I was at Fort Bragg this weekend. There's actually 4 different locations where GNC is operating on Fort Bragg. And Fort Bragg, as many people know, is home to our special operations forces. Some of them most elite special operators are based down at Fort Bragg. And so just the access and the placement, the availability and potentiality to abuse the information of our service members and use that for personal or intelligence or somehow any type of state action as they decide to build targets in this country, it just seems like a bridge too far. I think we all are free and fair marketers in this country. You have the right to sell to whoever you want to in this country. But I think that it just goes beyond common sense that if you sell to the Chinese Communist Party, that you're still allowed to operate on our military bases. I think that's just more risk than we can accept here, Brittany.
You alluded to it, but I do want to read what GNC CEO Michael Costello did say, according to Bloomberg. They're reporting he said this, quote, "Our Chinese ownership sees no personal information, and in fact, they have zero access to our data and our networks." And he also added this, "Nothing gets transferred to China in terms of personal information or other data." Do you not believe that, or you're saying, hey, it is not even worth the risk?
It's not even worth the risk. I mean, look, when they're telling the American people. Our Chinese ownership takes your privacy very seriously. I don't think that we can take that seriously as someone that is operating on our military bases with access to our military personnel. That's just the bridge too far. We are not about, allowing folks to take advantage, particularly our adversaries, to take advantage of our country, let alone our troops on our own military bases. GNC needs to leave our military installations.
What's interesting is you started this conversation by saying this was overlooked. Are there any other retailers from foreign adversaries like China, Iran, Russia, or North Korea that have companies that are operating on military bases aside from GNC?
We don't know. And that's actually part of what the Military Installation Retail Security Act is going to study. It's going to force Department of Defense to study this and say, okay, hey, let's do a big, huge sweep of all of our contracts, all of our contractors, and make sure that they don't have foreign adversarial ties to countries that have intentions that are completely averse to ours, so that they do not and don't have the access and placement to take negative actions against our country and against our service members. It seems like a pretty common sense approach to me.
Congressman, I feel really lucky in my conversations with members like yourself of the Four Country Caucus. It's a bipartisan group of members of Congress who are veterans. Do you have bipartisan support with this legislation, especially when it comes to that caucus?
So we are actually pursuing it right now. All of the feedback that we've had so far is completely universal. This is something that we actually just put in and filed independently, because the likely vehicle for this is actually just to go into the National Defense Authorization Act, which is the big, huge document that controls our nation's defense spending every year. And so that would end up going in, it would get included in the NDAA. This could absolutely be a standalone suspension bill where we suspend the rules and take it directly to the floor, because it should have such bipartisan support. This is a 90% issue. I think everybody takes the security of our troops very, very seriously. And so far, we've had nothing but positive feedback about what we've discovered and what we've decided to do about it.
Congressman, I would love to have you back on, and as the bill develops and as there are more action on this, I would love to have you on